Hey guys, this will be video one for a new video series I'm about to start, and I'll title it How to Design Build a 50s Era Korina Explorer. It's going to be, basically the 58 to early 60s design, and this is for a client that I have built a guitar for in the past. So we've spent a little bit of time in conversation talking about kind of what it is that he wants and was thinking. And basically, what I'm going to do with this video series, I'm going to present it in such a way that it's going to look like we're just really coming out of the gate, beginning to build the guitar. But I've already spent about 4 to 6 hours either in conversation with a client and, as well and or online doing research, looking at pictures, watching videos, and just doing some of the historical research, uh, making certain that I can get very, very close to the historical design. But as you will, if you're a newcomer, you'll, well, I don't have it on one of these. Well, I can show it in this neck. I always do a double adjustable truss rod, which is a modern design. That way, none of my guitars, even if they're historically spot on accurate, they could never be sold to someone as an authentic vintage instrument. So that's my way of protecting the industry, even though I'm building guitars that one could argue, well, that's kind of a copy. It's kind of a replica. It's kind of a, well, yeah, there's about 10,000 people out there doing something very similar, but they're putting the single rod truss rods in there, and they're not doing anything in their designs that really protects Gibson manufacturing. So neither here nor there. I'm going to reel myself back in, but I wanted to come out of the gate kind of firm and let everyone know we're not building a fake. We're not building something that's going to receive a Gibson logo. I don't do that. I've never done that. So, so after those 4 to 6 hours of thought and conversation and research, the client finally let me know, yeah, man, let's pull the trigger. Let's do this thing. So I'm here to present the video series based on how you need to come out of the gate. I'm just going to read my notes, and that way I can just start talking about the guitar from the headstock to the tail pin. So basically, you have to define what it is you're building, which we already know, and it's a pretty straightforward design. There really weren't any options at all. So it's funny. I'm just kind of read my notes here. The first thing you do as a builder for a client is you keep your ego in check and listen to your client. However, know when and how to say no in a way that they would thank you for it later on. And that'll make sense as I progress through the build because I'm the pro, um, they're the client. We as builders, luthiers, we sometimes we have a tendency to get lost in all of the minute details. But a lot of guys out there that are really phenomenal players, they don't have a clue what's really under the hood, and that's great. That's fine. They don't. They shouldn't. It's kind of like the transmission in my Land Rover. I got a general idea how it works, but man, the last thing I want to do is pull that thing apart and see it. I don't want to see it. I just want it to work. So keep your ego in check, but know when to tell your client, that's not really a good idea. I would suggest this. However, I'm going to finish with my notes. Uh, Base your build on any and all info you can glean from the general conversation from day one, especially the very first conversation. If they say, hey, I just saw a video of XYZ player, and man, he was playing this guitar and it was crazy cool. It had a Floyd Rose on it, and it was hot pink and purple, and it had blue stripes. Well, they haven't. They've already kind of created that image in their head of that's what they want to see leaning against their couch. So proceed with extreme caution, going, that's not really the guitar you want. No, that's the guitar that they do want, and that's when you need to shut your mouth. And if they want the hot pink guitar with a Floyd Rose, then that's what you need to build. But with this client, he came right out of the gate, and he mentioned to me, yeah, I used to own an Explorer, and it was actually authentic 70s model. So immediately in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that's a Honduran mahogany, or that's at least an African mahogany body. It's an African mahogany or Honduran mahogany neck, and it's a rosewood fretboard. I'm creating these the gears in the transmission, but I'm reading between the lines and I'm listening to him. And then I presented the fact, hey, what about the option of the true Korina? In other words, where that guitar truly originated from and who designed that headstock right there, that's Gibson. They came out with that in 1958. So, all of the big hair band guys, that it might have been a shadow, or the idea might have come from them going after the Fender Strat and tell more so the Strat design, but that's Gibson. So it's pretty cool how well it fit on the Explorer and how beautiful the Explorer is. And also even the Modern in its own weird way, if they had have put this headstock on the Modern, um, that guitar would really, really be bar none crazy cool. And I don't know if they ever did that, and then we all know that they finally eventually started putting that on the Flying V. And that's why you see the Flying V on the table, because for you newcomers here, I'm getting to the point to where I can kind of confidently say I'm pretty much a Flying V specialist. I've built enough of these to know what makes them tick and what works, and some of the attributes of them that have been overlooked and under engineered, where they should have done so much more on the front end. And I think this design would have really come out of the gate and done quite well from a physical player standpoint. So based on that, when he told me, yeah, on the 76 Explorer, and I loved it, I knew right then, boom, it was very much a traditional guitar player. And that's when I introduced, hey, what about the Korina? Have you thought about? Because I've been actually thinking about building one for about the last 3 to 5 years anyway. And he liked the idea of sending to 5 Watt World video, Keith Williams, I believe is his name, the Explorer video, where he highlights what they claim is an authentic 50s Explorer. But I would greatly challenge that based on the pictures that I saw. I don't believe that to be an authentic guitar, meaning authentic 1958. I don't know if we've ever even truly seen a 1958. I know guys like the Phil Jones of the world and the Gruins and the Gibson, of course, and some of the high end uh, restoration specialists. They know exactly what the authentic Explorer is, and I'm about 100% confident none of the templates that are out there are anywhere near the authentic, but I think there are one or two that are really, really close. Okay, so he wants to go with the Korina wood, which I also call that Limba, but we kind of trademarked it in the U.S. as calling it Korina. And that was a Gibson approach because they were building lap steel guitars. They already had the Korina in stock. And all of the sources that I've checked on, there's nothing about the Korina that is endangered. So I like the idea of, if it's not endangered, then let's utilize its beauties and its attributes and go from there. So it's plentiful and it's a phenomenal wood. Um, the only thing I would say at this point, and I don't think I've rambled too much other than just to get some of that basic stuff out of the way, uh, the original guitar came out of the gate with the Korina body and the Korina neck, but it had the white pickguard and it had gold hardware. So I'm saying to my client, that's what is original, but this is your guitar. Not this one, but what I'm saying, this the guitar that we're building. This is your guitar. Uh, if you prefer to go with a black pick guard and nickel hardware, or a black pick guard with gold hardware, you see, or what would be the other option? I don't know. I think I've already covered it. A white pickguard with nickel hardware. In other words, there's really only 2 or 3 different options. It's your call. But the original 1958 to 60s, they did not have the black pickguard. It was a 3-ply pickguard, from best I can tell. It was either black, white, black, or on the top, or it was white on the bottom, black in the middle, and white on the top, which was kind of a parchment color. So if we go white, I can age it and make it look really vintage. And even also like the hardware, if we go with the nickel and or the gold uh, traditional tailpiece, um, fixed tailpiece and the ABR1 bridge, I can relic it to make it look like it's from the 50s. So I've never really mentioned that to anybody, but I know exactly how to do the relic stuff. Even the tuners, I can relic it. And I could even age the guitar a little bit, or I could leave it, shiny, shiny. So gold or nickel, keep that in the back of your mind, what you want to do, and let me know, because it will affect the price. The gold is more expensive, and it's a little bit more difficult to get and find and make sure it's a quality plating. And then I've already mentioned whether you want to go with the black pickguard or the white pickguard. We've already talked about whether we want to go with a Korina Limba versus Honduran mahogany. We're going to go with Korina. And then the last thing would be the neck profile thickness. Um, the neck profile thickness, my client and I, we've already talked about this. We know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go with a thinner 60s profile. But when you're building this guitar for yourself, you basically have one of two options from a historical standpoint. They would have come out of the gate probably with a relatively not fat and chunky, but it wouldn't have been thin and shredder like. But just, personal preference. And I'm not going to spend any time talking about that because I've got a 58 uh, Les Paul replica over here. It's got a baseball bat on it. And when I play that guitar, I play completely different. It's everything about my style, the music I play, the genre. When I pick up my Gretsch Penguin replica, which is pretty close to authentic, I play completely differently. So it's just totally your preference as to whether you want a thick neck or a fat neck, a wide neck, a thin neck, and I'm not going to cover that in any of this video series at all. However, let me check the time. 12 minutes and 25 seconds. We will start from the top and come down. This kind of defines it. I bought this offline just kind of as a shot in the dark. It's a good little neck, but it's a 25.5-inch scale. I just wanted to buy it for reference and doing videos to, like, if someone wanted to know what a volute was, well, that's a volute. Or what is a scarf joint? And you might look at that and go, what? There's a joint there? They did an exceptional job with that scarf joint. And by the way, this is a plain sewn maple. And I'm not going to explain what that means, but this is a flat plain sewn maple. And then they used the flat plain sewn scarf. You can see the joint when you start turning it. There's the joint right there. It's a 15 degree, and it's beautiful because the scarf joint just almost disappears with the grain of the neck. So I can see it coming out right there. Beautiful. That's a phenomenal build. But I don't like this nut because it's a little bit narrow for me. It's 1 5/8 of an inch. So nonetheless, this is a great little sample. And where did this profile come from? Well, it came from as I mentioned, from Gibson itself. But it's a little bit smaller because the paper template tracing that I have back there is based on an old Kramer guitar I owned back in the it was probably it was after 95. It would have been mid to late 90s. I owned an actual old Kramer, and it had the 1 3/4 inch nut and had the authentic. Actually, I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but this is pretty important because if there's anything that defines a if there's anything that defines the Explorer, it's the headstock, So let's get back on point here and let's talk about what I'm holding in my hands. Let me see if I can show this. That tracing line right there on the bottom is the guitar that I owned. Very, very deep and droopy. And anytime I ever owned an old vintage guitar, I always took a tracing of it because I wanted to know, if I ever built a replica for myself, then I'd have the dimensions. Because especially today, you'll you're probably 9 times more likely to get misinformation by going online than you would if you actually own one of the originals and you took some measurements yourself. But then you come into the realm of, well, where do we start replicating things and when do they become fakes? Well, a lot of it depends on the logo. That's really the bulk of it. But my design here is a little bit different than my old Kramer. I scaled it down a little bit. It was beautiful on the guitar and it looked great with the body, but it was there's a lot of real estate out there that wasn't really necessary. So I took off about 3/8 of an inch, maybe a little less than 3/8, and I got just a little bit more narrow right here, which to me looks a little bit more like the actual Explorer. So, however, you can do things like that. Excuse me, but with this guitar for this client, I've already mentioned to him, I've already found the templates that I want to use because I've never owned an Explorer. I've never held one. I played one that was a like a Washburn type copy when I was a kid, but that's irrelevant. Meaning that's the closest I've ever gotten to an actual Explorer. I've never even played one of the Gibsons. So when in doubt, always back up and punt or admit that you don't know and just order the template. They're between 75 to $150 according to where you get them from, and it just guarantees so much. It takes off so much stress, and it guarantees that if this thing really needs to be another eighth of an inch, well, then I need to add that wood back, or either let the client know, hey, what do you think about my design? Because if you look at these lines right here in the center, and I'm going to geek out here a little bit for you builder types, that's the center. See, there's 3 lines there. The center line is the actual center line of the neck on my design. What that does, it takes all of the droop and it brings it up a little. I'm exaggerating, but if the actual droop is really about right there, I bring mine up about a quarter of an inch for my personal guitar. If you wanted to go with a Stratocaster, then you'd come up about another 10 degrees because the Stratocaster is not nearly as steep going down this direction right here. So when you get the template, then you can pull out the actual neck template and you can show your client and you can go, hey, this is what I received. What do you think? Do you like it or do you like mine? Meaning, like, if this were the template, I could say, hey, this is what's in the template. And I had no idea that the actual 50s Explorer headstock was actually much more petite than I realized. So, do you want to go? Or at that point, I'd probably recommend let's go with the authentic because we know it looks good with the scale. Okay, or at a minimum, at least you can show them that you have the ability to freehand design a beautiful headstock. So, it might be that they go, oh no, I'm not trying to build a spot on, replica anyway. I just want one that looks really good. And if you're the builder, you whatever you tell me. And then that's when I mentioned, know when to keep your mouth shut up until it comes to the point where you need to tell the client, uh, that's cool. Okay, as long as you realize that this won't fit in a case. And I'm just, I'm grabbing ideas out of the air. Or I've already checked the measurements, and yes, even if we go with the longer one, it will fit in the case. So things like that, a lot of ground to cover before you just pull out the table saw. Okay. And then what's the next thing that defines an Explorer is going to be the rosewood fretboard. Okay. That's kind of a given, and obviously that would be Korina, but I would really strongly recommend we go, and I've got plenty of this in stock. This is the a Bolivian rosewood, which is called, I think if I can pronounce this correct, a guy from Brazil chimed in about 2 months back. I think his name is Marcos, and he told me it was pronounced Pafijo, I believe. We would call it Pau Ferro, but he said it's pronounced Pafijo, I believe. So I say that to say this, I would recommend we go with the Pafijo or the Pau Ferro, as we call it in the States, or Bolivian rosewood. So this is a beautiful wood. And this is a Gavon ebony right here, which I truly love. It's one of my favorite woods. Um, It feels a little bit more slick, a little bit more oily, but this feels pretty incredible. And if you polish it, and that's why I have this on the counter, if you polish it with this Renaissance wax, the British Museum of Art, by the refined wax is blended to a formula used by the British Museum and restoration specialists across the world internationally to revive and protect valuable furniture, leather, paintings, metals, marble, ivory, freshens colors, and imparts soft sheen. In other words, if they were restoring an old oil on canvas painting, this is what they would use to restore it or clean it. This stuff is incredible. It's basically kind of like a saddle soap, but I don't think it smells like a saddle soap even, but it might be a little bit finer than putting saddle soap on your guitar. So I got that at Woodcraft. I think it was, $24. That was 25 years ago. So maybe a lot more. It's an incredible product though. So Brazilian rosewood, dot inlays. They were probably clay, but they may have been mother of pearl, but I'm going to go with mother of pearl. And then going into the body, and I'm just kind of, grabbing the air here because I don't have an Explorer body in front of me. The reason this Flying V body is on the table is because I don't think there's anything else to talk about because I talked about the neck thickness. The reason the Flying V body is on the table is because I've built a bunch of these. This is the 7th one I've built. This is the 8th one I've built. And I'm getting pretty good at really understanding how it went together, how it was designed, what Gibson was thinking of, and what's the difference between this guitar or an authentic late 50s Flying V versus the Explorer that I'm about to build. Just the shape of the body and the headstock. That's about the only difference, because from what I've gathered in my research, the body thickness, this is 1 and 11/16. I believe that the Korina body for the Explorer and even the V was about a 16th of an inch thinner than this. I love this profile. It's a beautiful thickness, but nonetheless, I would not dare go any thicker than that because this Korina body is not something that I want to start chambering, uh, and it's a large block of wood, which equates to weight. So I got to be careful, and I know for a fact the body's so big, there's no way it's going to be a headstock diving issue, even with the strap button in this location down here. Which, see, this is very similar to the Explorer body, and that it comes off the, that's if you look like at the video for 5 Watt World, Keith Williams, the Explorer, that's very close, except this comes down and flushes out, which is how I will build this Explorer. But when you're looking at these things, let's see if that'll hold. I'll just use my left hand. When you're looking at like this movement right here, the only difference is the Explorer just comes up a little bit higher, and then it comes down. So let me see if I can grab a. Yeah, basically that's kind of what defines the difference between the V, and the Explorer. Kind of like that right there. So that's what I meant by your strap button location is going to be about right here. I just don't see it having the possibility of being a headstock diving guitar, even if it were chambered. But the reason I went off that rabbit trail is because 1 and 11/16 might be a little bit too thick, because it might be the difference between the guitar being a half pound heavier or 3/4 of a pound heavier. So we'll cross that bridge later on, but nonetheless, it will not be a thick guitar like that right there. If anything, it'll be the same thickness as this one or a little bit thinner. Okay. So that's what I mentioned by having, why is this, on the table, is because basically that's the only difference, is the body design and the headstock, because both of those guitars have a very low profile body, neck to body joinery. Okay, I'll go ahead and talk about this because there might be some newcomers here, even though I covered this stuff last night. Uh, so you have the pitch of the neck that joins the body. It's not flat like a fender. See, the fender would just be like way up here, it'd be flat. But the Gibson has always had a bit of a pitch, and that right there is a 1.5 degree pitch, which is a very low profile pitch. But you could pitch this up as far as two degrees, especially if you were going to install a Floyd Rose and you wanted your Floyd Rose to float. And I'm going to stop talking about Floyd Rose because that's not what this guitar is. So just keep that in mind. 1.5 degree pitch will be perfect if you're running like a B5 Bigsby. You know, if you're running like the B5 Bigsby back there, 1.5 will still be fine because the strings are running under that front hold down bar anyway. It doesn't matter if the bridge is really, really low. Okay. So just, some things that I've learned from building for so long. And a very quick story. I've been building guitars for about 25 to 30 years. 30 years from like the first project I ever bolted together. 20 to 25 very focused and serious about building high-end guitars. And I've shipped them all over the world. So, it's pretty cool. So built a lot of jazz guitars per Robert Benedetto specs back in the early 2000s, and then I just got more into, more of this type of guitar. Well, basically what happened when the economy fell out around 2008, 2010, the prices just dropped, and I bought a boat, moved to South Florida for a while, let everything cool off until I could come back. So here we are building guitars and teaching people how to build guitars. Let me check the time. 26 minutes. What else should I talk about? Okay, so you're going to build an Explorer. We've covered what it is, what we want to build it out of. We're going to build a Korina body, a Korina neck, or we could have gone with a Honduran mahogany body and a Honduran mahogany neck, which is what those necks are over there. Could you build your neck out of maple and your body out of maple? Of course you can. It'd be a beautiful guitar, and it would probably be bright, unless you use a really, really thick pick. You could warm it up a little bit, but maple is a beautiful wood. You could do a maple cap on a Honduran mahogany body. Sky's the limit. You could do binding, but that's what I mentioned by when I was qualifying the client on the front end. Just within a matter of 3 minutes, I knew to just stay focused with traditional. And also because if you're building a traditional guitar, it really maintains the value. If you start deviating too much from the historical, like this right here, this is a pretty loud deviation from the historical 50s guitar, but this is not a Korina guitar. That was never my intentions for this to try to be identical to a Korina. If I was going to do that, I would have worked with Korina wood, So anyway, getting back on point, you're defining what it is that you're building. It's a Korina body, Korina neck, rosewood fretboard, hockey stick, lady slipper. I heard it called a lady slipper once. The hockey stick, the droopy headstock, which is just a beautiful headstock. One thing that is critically important is I'll be holding it on a 14-degree pitch. See, these are a 17-degree pitch. I'm glad I thought of this. Very important that you don't make this mistake. See, the one on the bottom, let's see if I can get these level. The one on the bottom is a 17-degree pitch headstock, and you wouldn't dare want to do that on this, because if you were on a 17, by the time you got way over here, man, it would look really odd, because this would be much lower out here, and it would also require your case to be much thicker. So again, I've always said Leo Fender was a genius. The way he came out of the gate with a flat headstock, just lowered down, and thinner cases, less material, wood right out of the northern part of America, the northern ashes, the swamp ashes from down in the Louisiana areas, and then things like that. He was really taking advantage of not only what can I build, but how much will it cost me to ship this guitar versus that guitar. and then you multiply that by thousands of guitars a year, and that's the bottom line. So we don't have to worry about that, but you don't want to ship a guitar to a client and then they can't find a case for it. So after that, it just boils down to, what kind of frets you want. That's very personal. That type stuff is not going to affect the appearance of the guitar you're building. So in other words, that's when it becomes a personal preference. Obviously, the pickup selection, that's where I always try to keep my mouth shut. But I love the Seymour Duncan, the JB in the bridge, and the Seymour Duncan 59 in the neck. And, it's just a phenomenal sounding pickup. And Seymour did a great job capturing the authentic sounds produced from the 50s and the 60s guitars, but at a price point that just really can't be beat. $70 to $100 for a single pickup. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a great price. And then there's the boutique guys out there, of course, but sky's the limit. And then it just comes down to your internal electronics. I go with CTS 525K, not 500, but I go with 525K within 5% tolerances. And then I only use like the Switchcraft three-way, either the tall frame or the short frame. Switchcraft, output jack, and then just traditional wiring, and then your capacitors and resistors. With stuff like that, you can design like the Kinman treble bleed network on a master volume, or you can do different oil and paper caps in your control cavity. Just the sky is the limit. But the cool thing about that is you can personalize it for your client, or you can just leave that cavity open and let them have someone design that per the pickups they elect to go with. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. You got to start somewhere. When in doubt, I usually recommend buy the pick guard. If you're not going to buy a template, then just a template set, then just buy the pick guard and put the pick guard on paper, draw a center line, and you ought to know by now there's a center line. There's a center line right there, and then that pick guard is going to fall in a certain location. And if you've got the fretboard drawn and the pick guard, you'd be shocked how close you are to designing your own guitar that's very close to the authentic. I'm not going to do that with this client because I want to hit it spot on. But, in other words, you don't have to spend money on the templates, especially if you think there's a possibility you're going to bail. And if you do bail and you did buy up some of these things, like this, you paid $20 here, $40 here for a little knockoff just to do some sampling. If you lose interest, just throw it back on eBay and unload it and walk away with some pictures and some time that you spent considering building a guitar. And I'm not going to talk about the neck construction at all in this video series because I've got all of that in past video series. But I've still got to order the wood. I've got to get the templates in for the Explorer project. So there's still a lot of groundwork that I've got to do. But as far as I'm concerned, he and I both have a verbal agreement. Yeah, let's pull the trigger. Let's build this thing. But then this video is for him to kind of hear me talk about what it is I'm thinking as the builder, and making certain that, as I've told him, my ego's in check, but also that he realizes, oh wow, I didn't know that they didn't have a black pick guard in the 50s, but I like the black pick guard. Or he may be talking to himself thinking, I hate that white pick guard. Then cool, man. I don't really care for the white pick guard either. Let's go with the black. But if we're trying to capture authentic 58, it would have been white. So it's my job as the builder to kind of introduce things that you might not have known and educate you from a historical perspective, as well as help you decide what guitar it truly is that you want. Because I personally think it would be beautiful if it was very quickly straight to the finish line. Korina body, Korina neck, rosewood fretboard, droopy headstock like we all like, and then I don't think you could go wrong with either relic nickel hardware in black pickup rings or gold hardware in black pickup rings. And either one of those will be really beautiful with either a white or a black pick guard. It's a very simple guitar, and it just really boils down to personal taste. Okay, so I'll end the video there, and we'll talk about the other stuff. There probably won't be another video for that guitar for another week or two, if not, maybe not that long, because I'll be getting materials in, and we'll keep this video series going on about these guitars. But as soon as all that material starts coming in, especially the templates, then we'll pull the trigger and do video too. Okay, all right, thanks guys. Appreciate you checking in. And if you got any questions, just let me know, or any comments. I always read my comments and I try to respond. So I'll see you guys in the next video.